Welcome back to Productive Passions. Today, we're diving into a story that's as inspiring as it is unique. This episode offers an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at the upcoming documentary, Vinnie-isms, the story of the cop comedian, slated for release in 2025. I'm joined today by the dynamic duo behind the film, law enforcement officer and stand-up comedian Vinnie Montez and filmmaker Jason Harney. In August, family and friends gathered for a special preview screening, and today we're peeling back the layers of what it took to bring this powerful project to life. You'll feel like a fly on the wall as we explore the documentary's making, uncovering the purpose behind it all and why Vinnie's journey resonates so deeply with audiences. Earlier this year, Vinnie joined us to talk about finding an outlet in comedy to deal with the demands and pressures of law enforcement, especially the toll it was taking on his mental well-being. In this episode, Vinnie and Jason offer insights into why the story needed to be told, the reality of balancing humor with serious challenges, and how Vinnie-isms continue to impact audiences both on and off the stage. So settle in and enjoy this intimate, heartfelt conversation on the courage it takes to find healing through laughter. Thank you so much for sitting here with me today. It is such a pleasure. I feel like a groupie getting to meet some of my favorite people. How are you doing this morning? Wait, why are you laughing? We haven't said anything funny yet.
Because he's a stand-up comedian. It's just what he does.
It's just what I do. I don't know. It's like, I think in the last 12 hours, I've been more nervous and felt like more on the spot than I have in a long time. I'm usually very much in control of like when my shows are happening, how it's going to go.
How close people are sitting next to you.
Yes. And like now, like, with the premiere or the screening last night, the family screening, it was great. But like having all the people that you,
Hey, sorry. Don't maybe like.
I didn't know we had a cop in here. But having everybody like right there that you know, love, are friends with, is a completely different feeling. It would be the equivalent of doing a show with just nothing but family and friends in the room. So the expectations for myself looking out to the audience were very high on myself, and I'm sure Jason felt the same way because we've been waiting to share this with the family and the friends. I got choked up a couple times, which is usually not what happens when I'm on stage. So it was just a different experience. I'm very happy that it's done and over with, and just watching people laugh and then having an applause break during the middle of the movie was just something that was completely unexpected. I remember running back to the sound booth where LaDon and Jason, I'm like, they're clapping.
Well, that happened quite a bit last night. It didn't just happen once.
Oh, well, I mean, maybe I missed part of it, but I was so like, I was waiting. I mean, I'm sure you were doing the same thing. I was just waiting to see the reaction for people.
Totally, yeah.
So they were laughing with the movie, which I thought, Jason's intent as the director when we first started this endeavor was for the movie to be humorous throughout, so people just, continually want to enjoy it. And I felt like, I give all the credit to him because I couldn't have done anything like what's there. The mastery, let me just say this. I've been wanting to say this publicly for a while. I have built the ability to be a stand-up comedian. That takes years and years of crafting that to get really good at it. And to sit there, see the first preview when the first cut was done, and to watch that and to even see where that evolved to where it is today and see the talent and the expertise that has to be there in order to make the movie what it is. And I'm not just saying this to try to be praiseworthy of him or just anything like that, but it's just really an art form. And when I look at that cut, I'm very proud of it. And I could not be more thankful and appreciative to both Jason and his wife, because it's like anything in law enforcement. I think it's akin to working in a career in law enforcement. It's not just you in the job.
That's right.
It's your family that's in the
right.
job. So truly that same thing happened with the editing and the creation, and just, they now quote me all the time, which is kind of weird, or they see something, Jason Ladon, they see something out in the real world, and they'll be like, hey, there's loofah, or there's I think they
Just
texted
happened this morning.
they texted me a sign from somewhere that had, a connection to the film, and so it's just really cool, and I just am very thankful for Jason and his wife to just wanted to work with me and create this, because quite frankly, you don't find very many opportunities in life where things like this just fall into your lap, and I'm just really grateful for you and creating this. I can't say it in any other words. It's just amazing, and so I'm very proud of the product that's come forth, and I hope that it makes a lot of people laugh, and at the same time we kind of bamboozle them a little bit, where they all of a sudden they're getting hit with a very serious message in the middle.
Yep.
And I think that was I don't think it was the whole intent the whole time, is to get that message across. And one of the things that I will never forget that Jason told me right up, he's like, a lot of these movies that talk about suicide and other things that are the negative aspects or the outcomes potentially for cops, it's not something you want to bring the family to and be like, hey, let's all get together and let's watch this thing that may happen to me. And it's kind of a downer, and it's not that those aren't important things, but we're able to kind of bring that message at the same time, kind of sneak it onto people, because, it's just a good message. And so I'm excited.
And it's an important message. I want to step back, because what I wanted to say to both of you first thing is congratulations. Congratulations to you both. That was so well received by the audience. Were you surprised at all by the audience reaction?
Well, I could tell you that's always the goal. You don't really know what to expect until you put it in front of an audience. As I had mentioned last night, I think we might have enough people to count on maybe two hands that have seen a version of it, very even less that have seen that version of it. And so now you've got, about 250 people, and you don't know how they're going to react. So, yeah, very, very happy with that reaction, of course, but surprised, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing I keep thinking back personally is there are a lot of bits that I think are going to be funny, and then I go talk about it on stage, and people are like, it's crickets. And you're like, wow, that didn't hit it all the way I wanted it to hit. So I kind of thought the same way about the film. Him and I are very close to it. So to us, it looks one way.
Right.
And when you're close to a project, you can only see what's right in front of you. So to bring other people into our world to see the same perspective for a moment and get what your intent was, that's pretty amazing. And what I'm really curious to see, because those are all people that were in the room for the most part. There might have been a few random public people there, but that room was 95% stocked with people who are friends, family, or some way associated with law enforcement or something, right? So that is a very warm crowd, and that's the home team. So I'm curious to see now bringing people who are not involved in law enforcement, not involved in the world that we live in, see their perspective. But I have a feeling that it's going to resonate with people pretty well.
I'm going to tell you it will. I have brought two people with me who are not involved in law enforcement at all, who don't know anything about either one of you. And they were, wow. They said, wow, that was really, really good. And you also had an interesting guest last night. You had the governor came out to support you. That says a lot about how important your message is. How did you feel having the governor show up to?
Well, there's a long pre-existing friendship there. So it was more of a personal thing where I think, he came out to support a friend, and not just because of the message, but I think because he was unaware of what the contents were. Nobody was aware of what this movie really entailed, other than Vinnie-isms, the story of the cop comedian, right? It's pretty evident that we're going to talk about comedy and being a cop, but how do you tell that story? What is it? The things that Jason took, I think one of the interesting things was 13,000 videos and photos.
It was 13,500 photos and an additional 1,800 videos.
So that's
that he hands me after we shot this thing.
Wow.
So he told me, Jason told me he's never had so much B-roll footage or archivable material before to work with. And that's what's really interesting. And having the experience of creating videos myself, because that's what I do for the comedy thing, you have to have things that it's not fun to watch somebody just talking on screen the whole
Right.
time. There has to be imagery that tells the story that links back. And watching him, like I've learned a lot watching him do what he does, and stealing a lot of those things now that I've seen, because like, you know, it's a craft. And so you were able to take from like the master. I feel like he's a master class chef, you know, and he is really good at what he does. So I always have surrounded myself with people who are experts in those areas.
Yeah.
And I may never become the master that they are, but I'm taking tidbits. And I just think that when you watch this movie, people are able to go on this journey, and they're creating imagery in their own head from what's being said. But then you have all these references that he's incorporated from shows that date back to 2009, I think, and archival footage of me talking on stage for the first time. And it really takes the people through the journey.
Well, we watched you grow up.
Yeah.
In that movie, we watched you.
Very embarrassing. Very embarrassing.
It was from like, what, 12 years old were you?
14, I think.
14?
Yeah, the youngest.
From 14 to, how old are you now?
48.
So that's quite a journey that we
Yeah.
got to go on a little bit with you.
Yeah. You went right there with me.
We did.
There's nothing else left to like.
We saw some very personal moments, including you in the restroom stall, in the bathroom stall.
Oh yeah, that's very true. I mean, like, that's what I think. You know, when we started this project, you know, Jason's like, there's not going to be anything left of you basically at the end of this that people don't know about. So for me, that embracing that piece of it, I had to get my mind wrapped around it. Like, we went back and forth. Do we tell the knife story? Do we not tell the knife story? You know, do we tell the haunted house? Do we not? I never got to see a lot of them, but there were a lot of things that ended up on the cutting floor, from what I understand, because there's just too many things to share. So he had to pick, how do you tell that story?
How do you put it together?
How do you put it together so that it has a flow that makes sense, right? Like, he's like, hey, we're going to show up. We interviewed like 17 people. I don't know. Was it more than that? I
think it was 19.
19 people.
2 comedians, yeah.
And it was like last minute. I was like, let me try to get these 2 comedians, because I really thought that piece telling the story would be important. But like, it was a collaborative effort. And just, I'm sitting there. I sat there and I was on the side listening to all the interviews. And then just to see what it ends up turning into, like, in my mind, I was like, gosh, because we spent over an hour probably interviewing each person, or right about there. And to watch only snippets come in and how all that comes together to tell the story, like, it's amazing. And then what I thought also was very interesting, one of my favorite parts of this, it's just a personal thing I saw last night. You know, my friend Sam Hart, we've chewed a lot of, he's a sergeant with the sheriff's office. We've chewed a lot of ground together. We've spent a lot of time on our off time together. People absolutely loved his character, who he is.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know what I mean? And he was he made that movie, like, everybody had their component.
Yes.
But I was very surprised how the public the community reacted to him. Like, they loved him. They were laughing nonstop at everything he would say, he would do. And when I was watching him, it's funny that we're talking about this today, is I've rubbed off on him. Like, Jason has rubbed off on me. You could see comedic timing. I saw that last night watching it, because when I saw the audience laughing, I was realizing that he had a comedic cadence as he was recounting the story. And I was like, oh my gosh, but that's years of DJing together, being friends together. He's been to a million shows. And so I think it's rubbed off. And I thought about that, and I go, Jason, and the way he started framing the film and describing how that was going to be, that has rubbed off on me, because now in my public information, when I'm putting things together, I could see the assimilation of that thought process has been inspired by what I've learned from Jason in a short time.
Well, and what I love about what you just said is how you continue to learn. Before we started filming, we talked about that a little bit. In your current role, you don't have to be an expert when you start something.
No.
You just have to be willing to start, to learn from other people. And so I love that you're talking now about how you've done that, how others have done that, working with you. I want to shift a little bit and ask you, Jason, tell me a little bit. You and Vinnie have something very important in common. What is that?
Well, I would think quite a few things. Are you referring to our law enforcement careers?
Yeah. But what else? Share a little bit about what else you have in common.
Well, you know, I think that both of us found an outlet beyond law enforcement. And I think that's really important. Then he touches on the film, how the job can consume you, and that he fell victim to that. And I will certainly tell you right now, so did I. Absolutely. It's kind of intoxicating because you do have this idea, particularly when you're younger, that you are really making a difference. And so you want to continue to make that difference. Now you add a little ambition to that, and you want to climb the ladder, and I work for a really large department. So there's all sorts of different really cool
because you were in Vegas.
Yeah. Las Vegas Metro Police. And so, when you have that, you don't realize the effect it's going to have on you later. But fortunately for me, because of just the love of film and since I was a kid, I've always wanted to make them. I was always interested in the behind the scenes part. I never want to be an actor or anything like that.
Yeah. How did you get to making film and being interested? How did that evolve?
Well, and that is actually how it started. It's just as a very young person, I was just really into movies, in a way that was also kind of all consuming, which I think is always a good thing because, it's what I was doing when I was off duty, not hanging out with other cops. It was always an outlet. Yeah. So I knew that when I was retiring, or when I would retire years before, that, I was going to have those skills honed at a level that I could go out and do it full time. Also knowing too that, when you're an independent filmmaker, you have to be able to do everything. You can't, because you're not going to have the money to be able to, because, films are very expensive to make, especially if you farm out the different aspects of the production. So for me, I knew to get these films off the ground, you have to have the skills to be able to take it from conception all the way to post-production to distribution and everything in between. That's a long process. So if you determine you're going to do a project, obviously that means you're essentially married to it for several years.
Right.
And forever.
Because you are, like you said, the idea, you were producer, director, and a million other things that I don't even know about to do that. So, and this isn't your first go around at this either.
No, Vinnie-isms is my 8th film. So, certainly you learn a lot along the way. But as far as the films I've done in the past, 6 of the 8 are law enforcement related. The other 2 are sports related. But, you learn a little bit each time, and you apply, whatever, just like anything. You make a few mistakes. Well, when I get to that point next time, I'm going to do this differently. So that obviously comes into play. With this particular film, though, I had an experience back in 2019. I brought a film called The Wounded Blue to a film festival. And I kind of immersed myself in the film festival and went to all 3 days and watched all the films, mostly because I just wanted to kind of compare what I had done to other people's work. And I sat on a Saturday night and watched a film called The Ringmaster. And it was a full house, just like last night. And the film was essentially about a guy who lived in Minnesota, and he made these world-class onion rings. And the film was about another person who lived in Las Vegas who wanted him to come to Vegas and become the official onion rings of what was going to become the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So the movie, though, was played for laughs. And the whole time, all throughout the film, everybody was just laughing at this documentary because it was really funny, because this guy was a total fish out of water from Minnesota. The last thing he wanted was the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas and being anywhere near all these people. But this guy was forcing him into it. Oh, gosh. Well, I'm bringing a movie about PTSD and police suicide to the same film festival. So needless to say, nobody's laughing at this movie. They're not having the same entertainment experience that Vinny was talking about earlier. So, that was my dream. I'm like, someday I want to make a film that has that type of audience reaction, which brings us full circle to your first question, right? Because that is what we were going for. I told Vinny from the get-go, I understand the mental health struggle, and I understand that comedy became the outlet for you, but I didn't want to make a movie that was another downer.
Sure.
I wanted to make something that from beginning to end was funny. And how perfect, right? A stand-up comedian. It writes itself.
So how did this marriage of Vinny and Jason happen?
Well, so...
Did somebody get down on their knees?
No.
Vinny? No?
So, well, before going into that, the other thing I wanted to say,
please,
to dovetail onto that is where I think we're also very similar is we're very much, I don't know how to use another word. We're very mature or we've embraced where we are in our lives. And we finished our careers. Like now I'm a PIO. My role's not as a commander,
PIO is?
public information officer.
Okay.
I still am a reserve deputy. I don't want to brag or anything, but like I'm no longer in that command role, official full-time police officer. But I still am. I guess still do all that stuff as a reserve. But our conversations outside of like when we're speaking specifically about a scene or something like that, they're not geared around the job. Like that's not what we talk about. I don't think we've really shared that. One time we were running that guy down and we're like, it's like when you're young in your career as a law enforcement officer, I mean, you just want to swap war story after war story. But our relationship has been so focused about what we do. And, now answering your question, how we met. So I was doing a show in Terre Haute, Indiana I don't even remember who it was for.
The Wounded Blue.
Was it for the Wounded Blue? Okay.
That's why.
There's just too many things.
Conferences.
And we happened to share a van ride, and he had one of the other main cast members from Wristlock in the van. And we were just driving, and we just shared, generic conversation about who you are, what you're doing, blah, blah. And then that night I was performing in like this dungeon of a place that it was a basement of some like older building, and it was not the most conducive place to do stand-up comedy. But similarly, that Jason is such the consummate professional and really takes serious the craft of, building a film to be what it is. I have learned that it doesn't matter where I perform at. You have to get the people who are watching, you want to give them a show. So I didn't perform at any different level because of the circumstance. I didn't have the greatest sound system, but coming up, cutting your teeth, whether you're performing in a biker bar or a bar down the road, or actually one of the biggest stages, Comedy Works in Denver, you still have to deliver for people because they're there to have that experience. Sure. And I did my normal show. Jason saw it, and he started, and I think we even saw each other after that at a restaurant.
We did. Yep.
And we chatted for just a moment, but then he reached out and he's like, "Hey, let's talk about this." And I was like, "Okay." And then and for me on my side, I don't want to speak for him, is I'm not the strongest person in the world, and I'm certainly not the fastest person in the world. But I think through my father, especially, like I've been given the ability to read people in situations very quickly. And I felt very warm and very, I had a really quick ability to just determine like this guy is for real. Jason's for real. And my trust level was there, and you have to take a leap of faith sometimes. But I felt like that instincts were telling me this is going to be good. And I don't know how he felt on the other side, but going through this process, sometimes you involve yourself with people who are kind of flaky, and you're not getting what you were putting into it. Right. And I've never said this to him, but I feel, and I will say right now, I have never felt more pleased with any of the things that have worked out great for me in my life. This is one of the projects where I feel like Jason has either met me or exceeded my expectations on putting the effort and the time into doing this the right way. And I feel like we truly have been partners, maybe not on the street, but like really working hard together. And we've had to have some hard conversations where I don't necessarily agree with his perspective and he doesn't see it the way I see it. But it's never been once where you're like, gosh, you walk away from that feeling like we weren't just having a really honest discussion and you're upset with the other person. We haven't had that. And I just feel like that shows a lot of, I want to give a lot of credit to him just for his professionalism, what he does, the mastery of the craft that he has, and just being so honest and blunt, because he stands his ground when he has that experience. And I feel like I'm mature enough in my career now to know, you know what, you sometimes have to yield when people know what they're talking about. And I have to trust that what he is telling me in certain areas is absolutely the gospel, because I don't know. I can tell him a lot about comedy, but I can't tell you about filmmaking. And I've never felt more confident in working with somebody in this way. It makes me feel proud to have this friendship now. And it makes me feel very proud to see this final product. And I'm humbled by it because it's just overwhelming to see this artwork. And I sit back and I watch it. I'm like, is this really me? This is crazy. So I just want to say that that's how I feel about it. And that's how I feel like this came this way. I don't know how you see it.
I see it exactly the same way, and obviously, as far as your question of what we had in common, and that is exactly it. And that not just the outlet, but also that professionalism and your dedication to a certain craft. You know, Vinny on the performance side, which is obviously takes an incredible amount of talent, but also a lot of tenacity to keep after it. You know, one of the stories that Vinny will tell you is in those humble beginnings, as he started out on a plank that's held up by two cinder blocks in a biker bar, right, for like $50.
Jugs in Denver. The bar was called Jugs.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, but you have to start somewhere, and I think Wendy Curtis in the film mentions the fact that he did all of those gigs because you have to hone your craft. Well, on my side, it's no different. I'm a big fan of James Cameron, the director of Avatar, True Lies, and Aliens, which is my all-time favorite movie, right? Well, he's famous for a quote that he says, if you want to make a movie, then pick up the camera, point it at something, and make your movie. Don't let all the obstacles in the way stop you. Right. And I think Vinny and I share that in common, where, what did he say? Phil's the data guy, but I'm a visionary. I'm going to make it happen. Well, I would be exactly the same way. I'm not going to look at something and say, that obstacle's in front of me, so I guess we stop here. We're going to make it happen, and we're going to get to that end goal. And that's how a movie is made. I mean, it's collaborative, but you have to have that mindset that you're going to get to the end. And believe me when I tell you, I don't know if it came across on screen, but this was a very complex project. It might be ultimately about one person, but it's very complex with all the moving parts involved.
Well, and I think it was about a lot of other people too. Your family, someone I know who is important to you, your father. Mm-hmm. I was thinking this morning when I got up and my mind was racing. One of the questions I really wanted to ask you is, did you ever think you'd share the big screen with your father, that you would perform with your father?
No, I mean, I've been holding on to that footage for forever. And I had talked to another friend. I was like, I'd like to make some kind of movie, not like this scale, but just something to maybe like a memoriam of my father, for the family, some YouTube iMovie kind of thing, right? And I just never felt like it would do justice because you're not really telling the story. When I saw how it was incorporated and how, that was one of the first things I was telling Jason. I was like, I'd love to incorporate this footage. And it was like the comments I've had from people is like, it was like he was speaking as if he was here alive today. It was so weird.
Did you hear, I have to ask you, did you hear the response? At one point when your father was talking, there was a response from the audience. People cheered. Somebody said, yeah, Rudy, like there was a real response. It wasn't just nice for you and your family.
Yeah.
There was a real response from the audience, hearing your father and seeing probably what you got from your father, not just the personality, but the performance.
Yeah.
So you're performing with your dad on film. That really struck me.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about because I never, like, to me, it's my dad just talking. So, but when he said the part, who am I going to leave my millions to? I can't remember exactly what he said.
Yeah.
The audience laughed hard because I'm like, well, first of all, we ain't got no millions. Okay, I don't come from no millions. But you're right. My dad was that's what I've expressed to people, that he is just that fun. He can make anybody laugh. He can make anybody feel warm. And then here he is on stage, for lack of better words, on screen, doing that very thing. Like, he was able, from the grave, through footage that's like over 20 years old, make people laugh in 2024. It's amazing.
Did he ever see you perform?
No, my father was long gone before I ever did comedy.
So interestingly, he talks about how proud he is of you, and he had not seen you perform yet.
So, that's what I was going to say. In that final appearance of what he says, I thought that was a surreal moment because he actually says, I'm so proud of the things he's doing. And what he's referencing is Vinny becoming a sheriff's deputy at that moment.
Well, I think what he's also referring to is 1996, right before that was filmed. So in 1994, I became the national youth representative for all 50,000 law enforcement explorers in the United States. I was elected in the Hoosiers at IU, Indiana University, weird connection. In Bloomington, Indiana, I was elected as a national youth rep. I gave up that position at the Arizona Flagstaff Conference, the University of Northern Arizona, my mother and my father were there, and they saw there was like 7,000 explorers in this arena, and I'm speaking in front of, and then my parents were like right on the side of the stage, and I'm addressing everybody. But that was one of the, and I might have even made a Taco Bell reference. I'm not sure, but there's a possibility.
A lot of those.
Yeah.
But he saw me in that grand stage, talking to everybody, making people laugh, and like representing the brand for the agency and for the explorers. And for him, you know, he'd been on stages all his life, but I remember him being very proud of that moment where I was doing what I was doing. So I think he's referring to that piece of it. And then just seeing, you know, where I was going with law enforcement, because I wasn't a cop yet. I was still a cadet. And I had barely been a police officer, because that was filmed in 1997. I was right on the precipice. I was a dispatcher at that time, so he'd seen that as well. But certainly, you know, I think that's what he was referring to. But it just happens to connect so well.
It does connect. It does connect so well, but he may have been referring to that, but I think he was proud of who you were and what, like to your point, what you were becoming.
Right.
So,
it's a great moment. It's a great moment for the film, though, right? Yeah. Because now you, like you said, it's almost like he was here today.
Right.
And what he's really referring to is what Vinnie has accomplished in the last 25 years, which I thought was just an amazing cap to the, you know, the third act of the film, because it really builds to that.
Yeah. It was so crazy, because when he came on screen at the end there, I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, but everything happens for a reason, I believe. And like I said, you know, the stars aligned, and what are the chances we share a ride? There was a million different times that we could have arrived, and you know, there's Jason Harney sitting in the front passenger seat of this van, and I'm in the back seat, and we're taking this ride. So
I got to tell you, I really expected a shtick from that. I really expected a Chris Farley. You met in the van, so I'm putting in a request to develop that as part of the. I want to see that. I want to see that. Because you do that so well.
Yeah. I don't know. Jason's pretty serious. Like, I take him as being pretty serious all the time. Like, I feel like I'm saying stuff that's funny to him, and he'll be like, okay. And and it's like if I can make him laugh, that's one thing. But then he'll say in the same vein, he'll be like, dude, that was hilarious. And I was like, but I didn't see the emotion in your face. You know, he was
laughing on the inside.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you haven't seen inevitably is hundreds of hours sitting in front of a computer screen.
Right.
Okay, and I mean, certainly it can be attested that, you know, this is how within our household we're always quoting you.
Yeah.
Because
which is very weird, by the way.
But it's not, though. Okay, now think about that. You're a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Now take yourself out of that equation.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a fan of a stand-up comedian, which we are clearly fans of yours, all right, no different. I quote George Carlin, Richard Dice Clay, Dennis Miller, all my favorites from the 90s, 80s, and 90s all the time. I'm just now quoting Vinnie Montez. I think that's one of the hallmarks of a great stand-up comedian. If you're being quoted with your greatest hits, if you will, that's something that people love to do. So it's not weird at all.
No. I tell him this all the time. I have no problem entertaining people and being the center of attention that way, because I'm giving to people and they're laughing. But I have a hard time taking accolade or being the focus of, like, last night was really hard. I have never had to have a cue card. And yet I had notes to make sure, and I actually rehearsed it and practiced it before we did. I'm usually, for stuff like that, I am like, but I was so nervous because it was really focused on me that I didn't want to screw it up. And I didn't want to forget to thank somebody in the family or him or LaDon. And I was like, and I kept looking at my notes. And I mean, I even remember like having to pause. I'm sure the audience couldn't tell, but I was like, hurry up, dude. Why are you taking a pause this long? And so to hear him say, you know, we quote you all the time, it's an honor for me, but I'm just embarrassed because it's like, it's not.
We could say, I could see that. And I have to tell you, the very first person when I showed up was this sweet lady. We both happened to walk into the ladies' restroom together, and I introduced myself and she introduced herself. She was your Aunt Debbie. And it was such a good conversation, but she said you were nervous, and because of who you are, you weren't nervous. You were nervous because you wanted everybody to enjoy their time, to really get something from it. All of the things that make you the humble person that you are. And by the way, I have to say, what I see watching the two of you is, I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm just going to say it. I see like a brotherhood, and I see like I see shared traits. I see you both are humble. You both are professional, to your point, very generous and kind. And that is something that's so important in anything that you do. But I think it's one of the things that has sort of bonded you, besides all the time and getting to know each other so well. I think that's one of the things that really bonds the two of you.
Yeah. I mean, I want to speak to that for just a second. So there's so many times in my life where I have invested myself in people or projects where I will be like, the Hopeaholics podcast, I wanted to be on that podcast because I love their message. They're helping people that are recovering and all that kind of stuff. And it has to do with mental health. So there's my link to it, the nexus to it. And they're like, when do you want to come out? And like, I flew myself out to do that. And, I had no expectation of anything in return. And it was one of the best experiences. I was embraced with hugs and I loved it. So I think that's one of the parts I love about Jason is like, we were both so invested, Vinny, I'll fly out and, at the same time, Jason, I'll take care of getting this family screening together. And just that harmony of like, I don't think anybody's keeping track of that stuff. We're just accomplishing the mission, but he's so devoted to what happens. And I can honestly say it's very rare that you meet somebody that's willing to extend themselves to meet you where you're at. And sometimes, and I don't like to have to be the guy who's like, will you do this? Or can you help? It's just like, he will do everything he can to help make this work. And it was easy for me to do the performances and all that stuff, but we spent a few days filming the interviews and stuff. But really the bulk of the work has been him pulling all this together, thousands of hours of, listening to the same thing over and over again. And I love to give credit where credit's due. And he told me yesterday evening when we were in the green room, he's like, Vin, I watched this movie 6 more times this week. I went frame by frame to just make sure this is the level.
Yeah.
So when I've done a joke that's perfected and I'm doing that on stage, that thing is seeing the stage a bazillion times. And I know where every single beat is going to be. And sometimes I'll move around that because the crowd's acting differently. But that level, just listening to him say that yesterday, I was like, geez, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And when people get that experience and you see that, it's like such a payoff because you've devoted that time to the craft. And I keep saying it, but like, you don't find many people that are devoted and have devotion to that. And it's not just to the project, but it's to me as a colleague and a friend. And I am very appreciative of that. And I am so humbled to be able to work with this guy. And I mean, like, he's forever got a friend in me. I mean, it sounds like a song that we know.
It is a song.
It is a song. But it's just, it's remarkable because I can probably count on one hand the amount of people in my life that I've worked on projects with that meet this level of expectation.
You know what it is? Partly is the dedication for sure, but you both have such a passion for what you do, and you.
It's funny you bring up passion,
right? No, but it's what makes somebody good at what they do, and it's what I talk about because when you are passionate about something, you usually do it really well.
Yeah.
And if you are the consummate professionals that you guys are, your name's on it. You want to be good,
Absolutely.
Right? You don't want it to be half-assed. You want it to be good. It represents you, but it also represents your family. You're representing your entire family. You're representing your family in the work that you do.
Yeah, that's the thing Jason has never left. Like, I've never walked away from any of our interactions from like, what was that? Or why? It's always like he wants it to be as good as I want it to be. And that makes me feel so good inside because I do care about my brand. I do care about my family. I do care about how people see what I'm putting out because this represents a lot.
Yeah, your name's on it.
Yeah, my name's on it. And but at the same time, like, I want him to be proud too of like what we're doing. And when I see him quoting or LaDon saying, hey, we were just talking about you again, like, it's so humbling, but at the same time, it's like, man, you care just as much as I do. And I have not spent as much time talking to LaDonna as I have Jason or interacting. But you just feel that same warmth, and it's crazy because I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm excited to see where this goes from here.
Well, the other thing I'll say about that is what I'm noticing is you both are giving so much because you want your audience to experience what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So you're putting so much of yourself in it, and that's exhausting.
Yeah. At the very beginning, Jason was very open with me, and he said, listen, there's going to be nothing left that people won't know about you. And this is going to open the doors to people wanting to know even more. And as a police officer, you spend an entire career putting up guardrails so people are like not in your business and people, right? But when you've finished that and you're moving on to the next chapter, you have to embrace, like, look, change is very difficult for police officers. Very difficult. You want to start a riot in an agency, change the uniform in some way, shape, or form. They will lose their absolute minds, or change the shift schedule or anything like that. So cops are always upset about things that haven't changed and things that stay the same. So when we started doing this, like, I had to make, this is probably one of the biggest mind shifts that I've ever had to do, is I had to embrace, because he was very clear about it. He's like, you got to understand, this is what it's going to be like. And I had to be like, okay, I had to be willing to open up more than I've ever opened up, right? Share photographs, videos, my family, who they are, there's no hiding any of that.
Right.
And embracing that. And this is where I think trust really is not only symbolic, but really true. Is here's this guy that I only know for X amount of time. We're in a van, and I'm like, here you go. And I hand him a hard drive. I literally hand him a hard drive that has like a terabyte capacity with probably a quarter of it filled. And I hand it to him, and I'm like, hey, let's go make a movie together. And you're like, this could be really bad. Like, what if he is like a closet, killer or something like that,
He has it all.
He has it all.
Well, it took me like 3 months to archive and catalog all of that. There are over 13,000 pictures and 1,800 videos. And do you remember when I was calling you, asking you to identify?
Or texting me. He's like,
well, like there were girlfriends from like when he was a teenager.
Wow.
Remember?
See, I mean, he's got everything.
Wait, should we stop here?
No.
Yeah. Well, no. And I'm like, I wasn't sure who some of these people were. He had to identify them so I could either, it's staying in the archive, or I delete it, right? So, I mean, there was so much material. But I've worked on films, many in the past, especially with cops in particular, where I'll say, I need some pictures or videos or something from your past, you in uniform, whatever. And these guys work a whole career and they got 3 pictures.
Yep.
Vinny's not that guy. Vinny, I mean, he's the dream documentary subject in that respect as well, because he handed over just a treasure trove of archival material, which you saw last night really comes through. And I mean, what made it in the film was probably maybe 1 to 5% of what he gave me.
Wow.
So just a ton of material, but you need that to tell the story. And I think one of the things that I always kind of live by, and this might seem a little weird, but if you remember the movie Wall Street in 1987, Gordon Gekko, right? Michael Douglas, Charlie Sheen. There's a scene in that movie where, he's been trying to get on calendar to see Gordon Gekko to pitch him, for months. And he finally gets in there. And he's sitting with his secretary, Charlie Sheen, with Gordon Gekko's secretary. And as soon as he gets called in, he says to himself, he goes, life comes down to just a couple moments. This is one of them. I try to treat every film just like that, and think that the reason why this is so important, the reason why it has to be your absolute best effort and you have to be all in on it, is because to me, this is that moment. Yeah. This could be the film that takes us where we want to go. Well, you don't get many of those opportunities.
Yeah.
One of the reasons Vinny and I started talking, I started following Vinny, I don't even know, years ago. My son was a police officer. And I thought what you were doing was not only very funny, but also really important. I was concerned about my son's mental health because, he did share some of the things that he was seeing. And, it's horrifying for for people who don't see this and experience this every single day. And you talk about the part of the reason officers are different, first responders are different. You're seeing different things. You're seeing things that we might get a glimpse of for a very small part of our lives. And that cannot leave you unaffected. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I greatly appreciate about your work is your honesty about focusing on your mental health. And you said something yesterday, I'm sure I heard it before, but it really stuck with me last night when you said it's ongoing. So when you go seek mental health and mental help, it's not a one-time fix. Mm-hmm. It's something that you need to continue to do, like we take care of our physical well-being. It's something that you have to do all the time, because if you stop, then the benefits of that go away. So I felt like that was important. Talk to me a little bit about why you talk about it so much, why you spend so much time about it, with it, and sharing with younger officers.
So I think everybody is different. I am able to, in my career, put on I don't want to use the word facade, but it might be the best way to say it. I'm able to put on the armor and the face that you need to go out and do the job.
Sure.
But I'm also very emotional. I'd say I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm a very sensitive individual. I care a lot. I'm affected by people's emotions and feelings. So in this job, that's fine. But when you're in the moment of doing what you need to do, you can't be impacted by your emotions, because you have to make split-second decisions. One of the ones that just comes to mind is my brother was riding along with me one time, and we had a rollover accident, and I get there. My brother's like, "Can I get out of the car?" I'm like, "Sure." And there's a guy that's dead on the side of the road. And so it was clear he was dead. So I step over him and I go into the field. There's a guy gurgling over here. There's a guy screaming in the car. And, I'm calling for a chopper and multiple ambulances, and we're just taking care of business. And 45 minutes later, I get done and I don't find my brother anywhere. And I go looking for him, and he's back in the Tahoe. And I open the door. I'm like, and I'm done with this call. I'm like, "You want to go eat?" He's like, "You want to go eat?" He goes, "Take me home." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Bro, you just stepped over that guy like he was nothing." And I remember that story for that reason, because, I think he was expecting me to get down and have a prayer moment with that guy that I stepped over. And it wasn't that I didn't feel for that, because I definitely did. It's just, we have business to take care of. And if I don't start directing traffic and getting the resources that need to be there, explaining what's going on in dispatch so we can help the people that still are alive, I'm not doing what I need to do to be effective. But that doesn't mean that moment's not impactful. I've become used to turning it on and turning it off. It's when I'm in my off time, when I'm by myself, when I'm at home, where you're not caught up in the moment. You can probably remember where you've had very busy days where you're very distracted. So unfortunately, work becomes a distraction. Sure. Because you're not engaging your personal feelings, your off time. So for me, when I'm in my off time, Katrina will often remind me, sometimes I call it spinning, where I'm just fixated on something and I just cannot let it go. And she'll remind me, and it's part of what it's become very normal in our household, where she's like, "Hey, your neuroses is a little out of control." And she says that lovingly, but she's very honest about it. And then I have to do a self-check, where she'll be like, "Hey, you need to schedule an appointment with Tiffany." So it's kind of like your car, or like you were saying, working out. You have to have to keep up on it. I'm just different in that I know I'm never going to be 100% without going and doing a tune-up or a little work on myself every now and then. I just need that. Am I much better than I was back in the past? Absolutely. But Jason, who's and his wife, they work out all the time. They eat very, very healthy. He's inspired me that way to do a little bit better for myself. But being willing to be honest about where you're at in that journey. Like last night, and Sam, sorry if you're hearing this, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't drink anymore. I really don't. But last night I was really stressed out, and my buddy Sam's like, "You need a beer." And so we went up, we bought a beer together. I sipped on it, but I didn't drink it. And I ended up throwing it into the trash afterwards, because that's not something that's going to help me. And But I didn't want to leave him hanging because, he was trying to be my friend and be there with me. So that's important to me too. But sometimes you have to, do what you need to do in the moment. But what you have to do is you have to be honest with what's going to help yourself. I was 321 at the end of last year. Jason started talking to me about, the way he was eating and dieting and not dieting, just living in the life. Right. Dieting, I don't like to use that word anymore because it's just a choice of your lifestyle.
Right.
I say in the end of this movie that need to start. If you look at the movie of how I looked in that movie at the end versus how I look now, I'm in way better physical condition than I was then. And I made that promise to myself that if I'm going to, and again, this goes along with meeting what you say you're going to do. I felt like I'd be a heel if I wasn't doing that when I said I was going to do that, especially now when I'm putting that out to the public. Because guess what? Other people, especially young officers and people who aren't even cops, they're going to hear me say that. And I want them when we go, hopefully we make it into a film festival, and I want them to see me. They're like, holy cow, Vinny's got veins. What's going on, right? I want them to see that I am a man of my word. Just as much as he is to what we've done here, I want to be that. And it was motivation to me to get my ass back in gear to try to get back in that fighting condition. So, but I haven't talked about that a lot because I worry that maybe I'll have a setback. There might be a taco revolution all of a sudden. And
it's okay to have a taco now and again.
Yeah.
But I love that you talk about that because I think when you're taking care of yourself physically, it also impacts you mentally.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I love that at the end that you did that and you really put yourself out there. I mean, you put yourself out there all the time, but by doing that, I think you're holding yourself accountable.
Well, I don't say this to Jay. I mean, we don't really talk about, like, I've asked him, I've called him.
These are bro things.
Well, no, but I've called him like, hey, what's that meat company? And I ordered like $200 and some worth of meat from the company he orders from. And he's like, it's got to be grass fed. I'm like, okay, it got to be grass fed. I'm learning all these things.
He's rubbing off on you.
I know, but I grew up in Boulder, right? And so it's so dumb, like how much stuff I know. Like, you want to take cold showers because it helps get the brown fat started. And you want to, there's 9 calories in a gram of fat, and there's 5 calories in a gram of protein. Like, I know all the stuff that you should know in order to be healthy. But when a plate of tacos is in front of me, I gotta be honest with you, it's like kryptonite. And but Jason has truly been an inspiration for me, and I am motivated when I have inspiration and to be part of this project because it's not done yet. This thing it's weird. I learn every day from him some other thing. Well, if you submit to this film festival, then there's this rule over here with this film. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much more intricate. But guess who the expert is? Right here. So it's an ongoing process, and I just want all those that are watching right now, like, listen, if you put a taco in front of me, I probably will eat it. So
Los Dos Bros.
Los Dos Bros.
Well, I think you're influencing a lot of people, not only on the podcast, but in the film and in your stand-up work. And likewise, Jason, the work that you're doing, I've seen some of your previous films. It's important work. So I am so humbled to be here talking with you guys, to be able to come out and be one of the first to see Vinnie-isms.
Yeah.
And I love that. At first I was like, why Vinnie-isms? I mean, I know Vinny's got some fun, but it's such a perfect title. And
I can't take credit for that. Phil West, who's in the movie, he once wrote something down. He's like, everybody's got a Vinnie-ism story. Everybody's got a Vinny story, which is so true. And he alluded to Vinnie-isms. And so that always stuck with me. And then here we are. And it was weird because when I told Jason that, I was like, there's no way he's going to be like, yeah, that's a good title. And
no, it's a good title.
It's a good title.
Yeah,
I'm quoting you, but you know what I quote?
Yeah.
You know what I love? And I love the selling tamales.
Yeah.
I was watching it. I said to my husband, Vinny's down there selling tamales.
Yeah. I'm weird that didn't make it into the movie, but that is a quintessential Rudy Montez terminology. My mom, I can't tell you how many times my mom, my brother, and I, when I was growing up, waiting in the car, we're like, where's Dad? He's selling tamales, and 20 minutes later, he's like, he's got to stop, and my mom always says he's got to check everybody's pulse, make sure they're good before they leave, and that's true, but I find myself being very much the same way. Like, yep. I want to make sure everything's covered. Like, I'm sure I called Jason a bunch of times. He's like, yeah, we already talked about this. He doesn't say that, but I mean, like, I want things to go well. When we plan things like today, whatever, I want things like what we say is what we got to do. And so it's a hard expectation to live up to sometimes. And I only laugh because, like, I truly am so happy that I have a friend named Jason Harney who is working on this project with me, because it's rare. It's so rare to find people who are just willing to meet you where you're at. Not in the he's not doing stand up, although I'd love to see that.
I think you guys need to do in the van down by the river.
Knowing Jason like I do, I think he'll be a hard
think
pass
about
on
him
that.
like on Saturday Night Live. You could get him to do it.
I know.
I am
Work-
the behind the
work on
scenes
that.
guy, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a bromance going on here.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know. Jason's. I can feel the tension in the building right now. Yeah, you're taking him out of his comfort zone.
Hey, there are people who are born performers, born stars.
Definitely.
That's him. Absolutely, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
mean, it's
guys.
one of those things.
Thank you for doing this. It's
Sure.
been an absolute pleasure.
well, thank you for having us. Thank you for coming all the way out here. I mean, again, that's a rare thing. I'll fly out. We'll do this thing. I'm like, okay, you just don't meet people all the time. In closing this out, you don't always have to accomplish everything when you want to. And I don't know why I feel like I need to say this right now, but I guess it's just more in my heart. Like, there's a lot of things. I have lists of things that I want to do in comedy, things that I want to talk about, but you got to put them down on paper. You got to speak them out loud, because if you don't give life to them, we could talk about doing a film.
Mm-hmm.
We could speculate about what it might be like. But he said something, it was James Cameron, who said, you got to pick up the camera and point it at something to start capturing whatever it is, right? I feel like one of the things my father did not, he was not bad at, he was absolutely exceptional, is taking a chance and trying to be something that he didn't know what was possible. He from buying 50 cases of pistachios to sell them all in the middle of the yard sales, to getting up on stage to sing for his first time, to taking a chance of meeting my mom. And my mom and dad met. My mom actually tripped my dad at a New Year's Eve dance
Oh, that's romantic.
over a burrito, and food's always tied to anything. And he ended up leaving the band on stage and dancing the rest of the night with my mom. And they were like engaged within like 3 months. And I think my father was an absolute genius in the ability to read people as well, because my mom was the consummate professional as far as who she was and who she is. And she's just such a warm and loving person. So I think he was able to read that. But taking a chance to ask somebody out, taking a chance to do anything in life. I did not want to be in a position where I'm 80 years old, which would be nice to get to, thinking back about what I could have done or what I should have done, or maybe taking a risk to go try something that I was making myself a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that's what I love about comedy. And I said this last night when we were closing. The successes are great, but the only way you get to those successes is through a lot of failure. And my dad wasn't afraid of failure. And I think that is one of the lessons that I will always look back to at him and say, don't be afraid of failure. This whole thing has had a lot of failure points where it didn't necessarily go the way we wanted it to, or man, I wish we would have got that, or I wish. But again, he said, if we would have let that obstacle get in our way, we'd still be where that obstacle was. But Jason just keeps pushing forward. I keep pushing forward. And I'm just really proud of that. And now people get to see my dad on a live screen and hear him talk about what it means to be my dad, and just that underlying tone of not giving up, being willing to put yourself out there. And if there's one thing that's a takeaway for me, is just, I tell people, don't live with regret. Go out and do it. Get whatever you're passionate about, especially any of the law enforcement EMS people that are listening to this. Don't sit there and say, I could have or I should have. Like, go do it. don't be afraid of that failure, because that failure will make you so great. And then you'll know where to work from, because until you know what you've not been good at, you don't know where to fix or get better at. And that's where, like, we've looked at this film more times than I kept, like, he keeps sending me these links and then he'd take it down. I'm like, put the link back up. You know, I need to see it again, you know, because I'm watching it and seeing where it was and where it is now. It's like, dude, this is amazing. And just all those people listening, be willing to put yourself out there. I'm nobody to give you advice, but I'm just saying, from a guy who's put himself out there like nobody else, please take that chance. My mom always says Columbus took a chance. I don't know if that's politically incorrect now, but my mom always says,
but it is true.
Yeah, Columbus took a chance, you know. And so, take a chance. Believe in yourself. I believe in you. I may not even know you, but I know that if you take that chance, that the things that will come from that, taking that risk, are going to be great.
You know what? As many interviews as I've done, it's not been a huge amount, but it's been a fair number so far. Everybody says that. Everybody says the importance of failure. Mm-hmm. It's very different than what we learned failure growing up. To be excellent, you have to fail. There are very few people that go out and hit it out of the park the first time. You got to do it over, and you have to be willing to take those failures and see them as opportunities, and go through embarrassment. If that's what the joke that you think is hilarious that nobody laughs at, okay, it teaches you to do it differently. And that's the lesson. That's a pivot point. So thank you for reiterating that again, gentlemen. I couldn't be happier to be out here with you two today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for telling me we were going to record this. I would have wore this Service Brewery shirt.
I offered to let him take it off.
I do not have an alcohol problem. I just want to put that out there.
I told him he was welcome to take it off.
Yeah, we cleared the room really quick.